Screaming BLM fanatics, hundreds of them, burst through the gate and threatened to murder the McCloskeys and then kill their dog. Here's part of what Mark McCloskey told us.
I see all these people outside the gate, and then the gate bursts open. People start coming in, and then a flood of people start coming in. They're angry, they're screaming, they've got spittle coming out of their mouth. They're coming towards the house. I looked over at my wife and I said, oh my God, we're absolutely alone. There's nobody here to protect us but us. That was the same night retired police captain David Doran was murdered. I was literally afraid that within seconds they would surmount the wall, come into the house, kill us, burn the house down, and everything that I've worked for and struggled for the last 32 years.
But the story didn't end there, unfortunately, we're here to tell you tonight. After appearing on this show, Mark McCloskey and his wife were bombarded with death threats, many of them credible. Today, they learned of another coordinated attack on them. It is planned for this weekend. They immediately called police. The dispatcher put them on hold and then finally transferred them to an officer. The officer didn't seem to be listening to anything the McCloskeys said. We'll call you back, police said, and they never did. Desperate, the McCloskeys then called a number of different private security firms, but not one of them would take the job of protecting them. The owner of the last company the McCloskeys spoke to advised them to flee immediately. Quote, the only advice I can give you is abandon the house. Run. Let the mob have its way. Let it burn. But the McCloskeys are not running. They have spent 32 years rebuilding their home, and they plan to defend it themselves. They have no choice. They are completely alone. No one will come to their aid. Their governor, Mike Parson, is a Republican. He's also a former sheriff. Parson could fix their problem immediately. Parson could send state troopers to St. Louis tonight to protect the McCloskeys. But he hasn't done that. Parson hasn't even picked up the phone to speak to them. He doesn't care, obviously. Nobody cares. About an hour ago, Mark McCloskey called us to tell us all of this. He was panicked, understandably. His wife sobbed in the background as we spoke. American citizens trapped in their home by a violent mob, knowing that something awful could happen to them very soon, totally undefended. This is your country. The mob is winning if things like this happen. So who is the mob exactly? They're not protesters. They're not civil rights activists. They are violent criminals. They are being used as a militia by the Democratic Party to seize power. That's the truth. But even that description is too imprecise. Most of these are Americans. They have faces, they have names. So who are they? No one in the media ever tells you. They don't want to talk about it. But tonight we're going to. Thanks to delayed but very welcome efforts by federal law enforcement, at least 128 people have now been charged for riot-related offenses. Many of them have been charged at the state level. We're going to bring you tonight pictures of a few of them. Authorities arrested 24-year-old Devin Montgomery on Tuesday on federal arson charges. Montgomery is accused of opening the door of an unmarked police car. Speaking of Minneapolis, 25-year-old Montez Terrell Lee of Rochester, Minnesota, is accused of burning down a pawn shop there during the riots. He was identified thanks to a video received anonymously at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. In that video, Lee says of the pawn shop, quote, F this place, we're going to burn this effort down. Authorities say Lee's arson of the pawn shop was methodical. He poured flammable material throughout the entire store before torching it. Jessica White is also being charged for arson in the Twin Cities. She allegedly helped burn down an AutoZone in St. Paul. Because everything this year is irony, White's Facebook page says she studied, quote, violence prevention at Metropolitan State University in St. Paul. Brandon Wolf, 23, has been charged with participating in the destruction of the 3rd Police Precinct in Minneapolis. Wolf was arrested while trying to enter a home improvement store where he had worked previously as, irony again, a security guard. Wolf was wearing body armor and carrying a police baton. Both were allegedly stolen from the police precinct. In his apartment, police found a stolen pistol magazine and a drug overdose treatment kit. Wolf was homeschooled by his mother in Pensacola, Florida. His father told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that his son, quote, has grandiose ideas, a lot of them, and zero common sense. His father added, quote, I'm still proud of him. Whether he burned down the police station or not, he didn't hurt anyone, did he? End quote. Jessica Taggart of Salt Lake City was participating in a BLM protest in Provo when a white SUV tried to pass through the area. A crowd swarmed around the car, and according to police, without provocation, Taggart drew a gun and fired twice into the car, nearly killing the driver. Taggart then hid his gun and went back to protesting as though nothing had happened. It appears Taggart went on Facebook afterward to defame the driver as a, quote, Nazi or white supremacist who ran over protesters. Hours later, he posted, quote, hashtag America 2020, no respect for other human beings blows my mind. We will overcome this together, exclamation point. Police have charged Taggart with attempted murder. And then there are the people who have been targeting our public art, our shared history, our heritage.
Are allocated. As the U.S. Attorney in D.C., all I can tell you is how do we charge cases? How do we look at the evidence? And what I can tell you in that regard as a prosecutor is we are charging cases not on the basis of political affiliation. We're charging cases on the evidence purely.
Amen. Equality under the law. That's what we need to get back to. Thank you. You're so nice to come and explain that to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Paul Kuhn has thought a lot about what's going on big picture, because a lot of things are. He's the author of a...
Because ACE now offers free evaluation by one of our experts.
Sparrow, it's okay, just relax. There's no...
That guidance might be better received, but they aren't. There are two rules at play. One for protesters and rioters, and another for law-abiders. This holiday weekend, every American is entitled to celebrate as they see fit, calculating the risk, whether raising a fist or waving a flag. It is this great country that allows us that freedom. It deserves our respect and to be celebrated boldly this weekend. Joining me now is Horace Cooper of Project 21, the co-chair and author of How Trump is Making Black America Great Again. Also with me is Scotty Smart. He's founder of the Smart Foundation. Thank you both for being here. Scotty, you were supposed to speak at a Forget the Fourth event in Atlanta. What do you intend to achieve by doing this? I know you're having some health difficulties and may not be able to attend, but what are these protests designed to do exactly?
Well, these protests are designed to educate people and to make sure that we have a unity amongst ourselves. When we say forget the fourth, a lot of people try to strategically change the narrative and make it a hate rhetoric against the Constitution or against the flag and things like that. And that's what it's not. But it's also to make sure that we hold America accountable for saying that it provides liberty and justice for us all, which we as black people don't feel that we are getting in this country. And so when we go to celebrations like this, we voice our opinions and we voice ourselves, because if you look at the history of this country, which a lot of times people try to overlook, it has nothing that's been great for black people since 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was signed. We haven't necessarily been treated as equals. And so as we move forward...
So Scotty, wait a minute, Scotty. So you don't believe black Americans can celebrate the 4th of July? Is that what you're saying? I mean, you're carving black America out of the 4th of July, or that's what you'd like to do?
I'm not carving anyone out of anything. Anyone is free to celebrate however they would like to celebrate. What I'm saying is that we weren't free in our independence on the 4th of July when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So therefore, we aren't celebrating it. Or me personally. So anyone is able to just... Go ahead.
I gotta let Horace in this, Scotty. Horace, your reaction is July 4th not a holiday for black Americans, or one they shouldn't take part in?
This is patent nonsense. First of all, black Americans, like white Americans, are going to be overwhelmingly on the roads this weekend. We're going to be setting a record of the number of people getting together with their loved ones to celebrate. Secondly, in 1776, there were thousands of free black men who joined in the fight to help secure liberty and freedom. It is an absolute insult to the sacrifice that those people made to say that we were not, quote, free. Some were free, some were not free. Now all are free. America has lived up to the model that it set up. This experiment has been remarkably successful, and this weekend is a time that we should all be coming together to celebrate that success.
Scotty, what's wrong with that?
I don't even think Horace could actually believe that, what he's saying himself. So let's give Horace a history lesson about black Americans in this country, because he said in 1776 that we were free. But Horace, we weren't free until 1865. Is that not correct?
No, he said some people were free.
The 13th
See, that's not true. You don't know your history. Stay away from eating the Tide Pods. Stay away from eating the Tide Pods and look at the history book, and what you will see is there are a number of black Americans throughout history who stood on the side of freedom and liberty. This celebration is for everyone who supports liberty. It is not for whites, it's not for blacks.
Horace, I want to let Scotty get in here. Go ahead.
So when we talk history and we talk about the abolishment of slavery with the 13th Amendment, even then, right after that, you have black codes, which legally made us slaves still because they still incarcerated us for not having homes and not having jobs at that time. And then as you move forward throughout history, you don't get civil rights and you don't get voter acts until 1965. And so when you go to that point of our history, which is 100 years later, now we're in modern day history. And then talk about how the government has strategically always systematically pressed from 1965 to 2020.
Yeah, I think Horace's point is America has fulfilled the promise. It wasn't fully fulfilled early on, but it has been now. Black Americans are, you know, Louis Armstrong is as much a part of the American story as Jackie Robinson and George Washington at this point. You know, two Republican senators, I want to get into this, two Republican senators, Ron Johnson and James Lankford, have put forward a bill to replace Columbus Day as a federal holiday with Juneteenth. This is Senator Johnson, or he said rather, we celebrating emancipation with a federal holiday, but we believe we should eliminate a current holiday in exchange. We chose Columbus Day as a holiday that's lightly celebrated and least disruptive. Here's my question to both of you. Juneteenth came 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, okay? The 13th Amendment was actually ratified on December 6, 1865. So should we be celebrating Decemith? I mean, is that what we should be celebrating? I'll let you both get a crack at that. Is that what you want, Scotty? You want Juneteenth and no more 4th of July?
Juneteenth is a celebration of freedom for us, and I think that is something that should be a national holiday. I appreciate people stepping up and taking that stance. But even then, we talk about systematic oppression throughout the entire history of America. We still haven't gotten equality and justice for all, or liberty and justice for all, as the Constitution says. So you can look through systematic oppression, through poverty, through probation, through mass incarceration. You can look at several instances within our climate that are controlled by systematic oppression and white supremacy that has not afforded black
I need to let Horace get in here, Scotty. Yeah, I need to let, go ahead, Horace, you respond.
All the left-wing Marxist drivel aside, there is a fact. The fact is America gave more lives in the Civil War than in any war America has ever been a part of. And as a result of that war, 3 constitutional amendments came about. And as a result of that, America joined together and ultimately has said that it is going to commit, and has done so, committed to the idea that we did at our inception. Every citizen is going to be recognized and supported equally before the law. What they're wanting to do now is to throw that away, and yet it ignores the marvel of what our country is all about.
Scotty, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you. There's no way that that's true, Horace. There's completely injustice within our systematic oppression through criminal justice. Black people don't get the same sentences as whites. You have someone that it was just released who was sentenced to 1,000 years in jail for child pornography that just only did 7 years and was paroled yesterday. You have a black man in Kansas that was sentenced to 12 years for kissing a young white girl, but there was no DNA evidence found upon him. So make sure when you talk facts that you have your facts correct and you don't use your talking points to make sure you get your paycheck.
Go ahead,
These are talking points. Read my book, and you'll see 100-year history of the progress of Americans who happen to be black by policies that were great for all of America.
Okay. We're going to leave it there, gentlemen. And Scotty, Horace, I want you all to come together and celebrate this great country that allows us to converse like this and allows us to support and love one another. And happy July 4th to both of you. Thank you for being here. Across the country, Americans are fighting to protect their rights and to free themselves from COVID lockdowns by appealing to the courts.
Those who serve with honor led with courage and took this great nation into the future. Their words, deeds, and legacies will survive time immemorial. America's worst president will neither be remembered nor revered.
No, I don't take responsibility at all. We were given a...
He will be forgotten
circumstances. Next,
as
please.
quickly as we can. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I'm Lucy Kafanov in Houston, Texas, and this is CNN. July 4th is different this year. I mean, everything is different this year because of a pandemic, celebrations included. But we're also in the middle of a national reckoning on race in this country. The week of mass protests following the death of George Floyd show, well, July 4th doesn't represent true independence for everyone in the U.S. Joining me now, Michael Higginbotham. He's a professor of constitutional law at the University of Baltimore and author of Ghosts of Jim Crow, Ending Racism in Post-Racial America. Also joining is CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers. He's the author of My Vanishing Country. Gentlemen, you both have phenomenal books I really encourage everyone to read. I'll begin with you, Michael, if I can. Professor, I mean, the president is making protecting Confederate monuments a top priority. He's calling Black Lives Matter a symbol of hate. What's the motivation here? Why deliberately stoke racial animosity and try to pit people against each other? What playbook is this?
This is what the president's playbook has been since 2016 when he came down those escalators and called Mexicans criminals and rapists. The president is about division and distraction. Division and distraction. That's what he's done with immigration, build the wall. That's what he's done with coronavirus, don't wear the mask. That's what he's done with racial equality, protect Confederate monuments. So what I would suggest the president needs to do is stop worrying so much, stop protecting stone and marble statues, and start protecting living Americans. We're in a pandemic, as has been mentioned all evening. We've got 125,000 deaths. We've got over 3 million that are subject to the virus. And the president needs to start protecting the living. So let's get a national policy, Mr. President, on the pandemic, and let's start wearing a mask.
I mean, Bakari, the irony should not be lost on people that a pandemic that has a disparate impact on black and brown people in this country is now being talked about by a president who is stoking racial tensions here. How do we celebrate this country on Independence Day, Bakari, when it's very clear that not everyone is afforded the same freedoms?
Well, we've been here for 401 years, so let's be mindful of that. But also let's understand that we're people of perseverance, we're people of hope, we're people of faith. And so while we have the President of the United States who's here stoking fear, as Michael said, we've had the Lester Maddox, we've had the Bull Connors, we've had the George Wallaces of the world, and Donald Trump is just another one in the long line of those individuals. But we've always persevered. And so while we're celebrating July 4th, what I really want us to do is celebrate Tulsa, Oklahoma. What I really want us to do is celebrate the Orangeburg Massacre, February 8th of 1968. What I really want us to do is understand who Sarah Mae Fleming is, who sat down 17 months before Rosa Parks. I want us to understand our true history as we celebrate this July 4th and get out of this Messiah complex. There's nobody coming to save us, but we do have the heroes, and we can stand up like we're seeing all across the country in every single state right now and create the change we want to see.
You know, it's a fascinating point, especially the idea of we're all in this together, but someone's got to actually try to land the plane. Everyone can't be both passenger and pilot. Someone has to take the lead on these issues. And Bakari, I guess on this notion, you know, a source is telling CNN that the NFL is planning to play the song Lift Every Voice and Sing, which we know is the Black national anthem, before every game in week 1 of the season. And this does speak to some awakening, but superficial or what?
Yeah. So please, with all due respect to all the city officials, black, white, and otherwise, Democrats and Republicans, to black folk and white folk alike, do me a favor. Please stop writing Black Lives Matter on everything. Stop singing the Negro National Anthem. And let's actually start focusing on eradicating systemic injustice and institutionalized racism. Those are the things we have to focus on. painting something on the street will not effectuate the change we actually need. And so while it may be good aesthetically, it's not going to make sure that my children will actually have a better future than the one they have today. So that's my only point. This is all good and dandy, but it doesn't actually effectuate the change we want to see.
So, Michael, I see you nodding. What is your opinion?
Well, this is our racial moment of truth. No question about that. And I agree with Bakari. What we need to do is we need to have some substantive changes. We need to pass some laws protecting individuals against discrimination. We need to change some bad policies and practices. We've got, tremendous disparities, not only in the criminal justice system, but across the board in education, in economics, in healthcare. And COVID-19 has highlighted these disparities. In 8.5 minutes of a police officer, his knee on George Floyd's neck, has showed us the consequences of not doing anything about these disparities. So we need to pass some laws quickly to start protecting individuals against race discrimination.
Michael, Bakari, thank you. Wish we had more time to talk. We'll talk again.